My wife said she vanished for 2 hours with a man who tried to kiss her during a girls' trip for tacos from my brother's guest room at 3 a.m. Unable to sleep, I'm writing this anonymously. I'm pretty mentally destroyed, and I need to get what I'm feeling off my chest. Don't expect a happy ending story to offer some context. I'm Josh, 34, a man, and I've worked as a construction site manager for 8 years. I don't earn like a billionaire, but the money I make is enough for me to buy brand name cereal and good quality toilet paper. I've been with my wife, Chloe, 29, for 8 years, and we've been married for 5 years. We have 2 wonderful children, a daughter named Olivia and a son named Noah. Regarding my past, I grew up in Michigan. My father was a plumber, and my mother worked as an elementary school teacher. In high school, I played football as a linebacker. I wasn't good enough for college basketball, but I could hold my own. After 2 years at a community college, I dropped out to start a construction apprenticeship. I worked tirelessly, climbing from basic equipment operator to foreman, and finally to site manager. I'm the kind of person who makes sure buildings don't collapse and that no one loses their life under my supervision. I met Chloe at a mutual friend's party when I was 26. She was the sexy girl everyone warned me about, a party girl who rarely committed to a relationship. Although she had numerous personal issues like conflicts with her father, and despite her demeanor and style, always dressed for the club and gym-toned, which indicated she was out of my league, her beauty completely impressed me. A classic stupid move on my part. The relationship was perfect at first. We experienced an intense honeymoon phase with spontaneous trips and romantic gestures, like her bringing me lunch at the job site. At that time, I was studying marketing without being very clear about what I wanted for my life, but she took the situation very seriously when she found out she was pregnant with Noah. After 3 years together, I proposed immediately. Although my parents had their doubts, my mother asked if I was sure. I was convinced that we had built something solid. 5 years later, we bought a decent house in the suburbs. While I work more than 50 hours a week on the sites, Chloe teaches part-time yoga, holding 2 classes a week, and shares her motherhood and wellness experience on Instagram, accumulating around 4,000 followers. It always seemed normal to me that when you marry such an attractive woman, your partner might have a demanding nature. However, as the relationship progressed, complaints began to emerge. Although we never argued violently, Chloe started expressing her feeling of being trapped in the routine with the children, claiming she had lost her identity as a woman, while her single friends were having adventures and enjoying life. Meanwhile, I was busting my butt on the construction sites in 95-degree heat to afford the organic food and luxury products she insisted on buying. The conflict escalated when Chloe's college friends planned a 5-day trip to a fancy country house in Arizona with an infinity pool and mountain views. She had been hinting at it for weeks, sharing photos and group chats, and I, stuck in the routine of caring for the children, encouraged her, telling her to have fun. I even gave her $600 for expenses that were supposedly going toward repairing my truck while I stayed home, working remotely and asking my mother to help on the days I had to be on site, juggling all the responsibilities. During the first few days, she stayed in contact, calling at night, video calling with the children, and sending photos of them by the pool, posing with their enormous floral accessories. But on the 3rd day, her calls became shorter and her messages vaguer. Despite saying, "I'm having fun and I miss you," something had changed. Upon her return, her behavior was very strange. She barely spoke on the phone, was secretive with her screen, and got angry over minimal details, like putting the children's clothes in the wrong drawers. At first, I thought she might feel overwhelmed returning to the harsh reality and day-to-day responsibilities. However, everything became clearer and more painful when, with a dramatic and seemingly routine attitude, she turned to me while dressing the children for the next day. "Josh, I need to tell you something that happened on the trip." It turns out that on the 3rd day, while they were at a bar, she met some guys, and one of them, a guy named Ryan, approached her. According to her, while they went out for some air, Ryan tried to kiss her. I, interrupting her story mid-sentence, froze. My mind started reconstructing scenes I never wanted to imagine. I clung to control, clenching my jaw so hard my muscles seemed to be breaking, but I kept my voice low for the sake of the children. I asked her firmly, "And what did you do?" She replied in a way that showed she had reacted immediately, with a dry, decisive tone. When I heard his words, I pushed Ryan away without hesitation, telling him I was married and had children, and I returned inside. I remained silent for at least 10 seconds, my ears burning and my heart pounding as if it wanted to jump out of my chest and flip the house. I felt immense fury. How could you get involved with a stranger in a bar during a girl's trip? Despite the contained rage, I didn't want to scare the children or give them the satisfaction of seeing me lose control. I stared her straight in the eyes and said, "I'm glad you remembered you have a family." I quickly left the room, holding back the urge to ask countless questions. Why were you outside with him? What were you talking about that required going out for air? How long were you together before the near kiss? However, I refused to ask them immediately, incredulous at the idea that 8 years together, 2 children and a mortgage, could be ruined by a moment of stupidity. Or maybe there was more. 2 weeks have passed, and the atmosphere at home is still strange. Chloe gets nervous every time the phone rings. She goes to sleep early, but I can see the light of her cell phone under the sheets late into the night. Last night, while we were watching a basketball game, she came in with an air of extreme sorrow and sat on the edge of the sofa. In a slow voice, she told me, "Josh, there's something else from the trip I need to tell you before you hear it from others." I held the remote control in my hand without looking away, knowing that what she was about to reveal would have an impact as strong as the final score of a tight game. She didn't sit down, but rather hovered in the air, preparing to drop the bomb. At that moment, Lena, a friend of Chloe's whose husband works at the same company as me, intervened, nodding for her to continue with her story, as she didn't want him to hear her version of events first. That night, after going out for tacos, Chloe confirmed, with a barely perceptible gesture, that she had indeed gotten involved with that guy named Ryan, the same one who had tried to kiss her. It turns out that after having a few drinks, she offered to drive, arguing that she wanted to talk and apologize. I looked at her incredulously and asked, "So you got into a car alone with the guy who tried to cross the line over some tacos? And on top of that, you were the soberest of the night while he was going through a difficult divorce and just needed to vent." The way I pronounced those words was contained, without raising my voice or moving from my spot, but with enough firmness to make my confusion clear. I asked her, "Are you sure it was about tacos?" Because the location and the argument didn't seem to match. Taking out the map on my phone, I verified that the place she mentioned was only 12 minutes from the lake, far from the hour-long distance that had been hinted at. Faced with the confusion, she opened her mouth and then closed it immediately, and finally said to herself, "It happened after the kiss, right?" Which increased my bewilderment, as she had previously assured me that the kiss took place at the end of the trip, and now there seemed to be a contradiction in the chronology. I confused the days, and the timeline has become blurry. That night, while he was drinking and I was reviewing the supposed visit to the taco stand on my phone, I noticed inconsistencies. The place closes before midnight, and yet, according to her, you left late. With a slow nod, it became evident that there were no tacos, no photographs of them, nor the presence of any wrapper. Just silence. The situation was getting worse. Your phone seemed glued to your hand, always face down, immovable, even in the bathroom while you were showering. I remember seeing you deleting messages the other day, and you quickly explained that it was spam, although you insisted you were doing it to free up space. I couldn't help but laugh. Your cell phone is barely used and has more capacity than a warehouse. With some annoyance, you sighed as if you were overthinking the matter while I reiterated that the days had gotten mixed up in my mind. Ryan was initially enthusiastic and offered me pictures of his dog. However, in an unexpected twist, you noted that he was also crying, leaving me completely unsettled. Then I questioned, "What made you think it was a good idea to go alone with a guy who had already shown his intentions?" Why didn't you stay home with your friends or even with someone else? In response to my question, your face hardened. Don't you trust me anymore after everything we've been through? You retorted, before furiously deciding to call your mother, that person who has spoiled you since day one. Since then, I found her relegated to the guest room, as if I were responsible for talking to her. The situation was becoming increasingly unusual. I was being accused of being the bad guy for asking simple questions that were expected to have direct answers from the start. I only asked for the truth without drama, and it seemed absurd to me that after 8 years of marriage with a mortgage, 2 children, and a recently remodeled house, I was being treated like an idiot for questioning the obvious lies about that taco run. And we all know what that really means. The confusion even affected my performance at work. The next day, I could barely concentrate, suffering from a hangover, dropping tools, and almost falling off a scaffold from being so distracted. It was then that, desperate, I decided to message Mark, Lena's husband, to meet up for a beer after work and clear some things up. We met at a dark sports bar near the factory. The conversation initially revolved around trivial topics, like how work was going and how the kids were. But in less than 5 minutes, I plunged into asking what Lena told him about Chloe's trip. Mark sighed, and after a big gulp of beer said, "Look, buddy, I hate to get involved in this mess, but according to her, after Ryan tried to kiss Chloe on the 3rd day, she initially rejected him. However, Lena recounted that an hour later, Chloe was sitting next to Ryan, laughing at his jokes, letting him brush her arm, and even allowing him to hand her his jacket when it started to get cold, even though the temperature was around 85 degrees. By the 4th day, everyone in the group was commenting on how obvious the flirting was. At one point, they were in the hot tub, and Chloe practically nestled in Ryan's lap. The situation escalated when, after offering to buy tacos, an action no one stopped because, according to Mark, everyone noticed what was happening. They returned 2 hours later without tacos, with Chloe's hair messy and her lipstick smeared. When Lena asked about the food, Chloe just laughed and said, "We got distracted." That night, the bitter taste in Ryan's forced smile made me feel like I had been punched, and also like I wanted to set myself on fire. Mark added resignedly, "There's more," with an expression that betrayed a desire to be anywhere else. He said that the next day, Lena heard Chloe giving phone instructions to Ryan to get to a country house by the lake. An hour later, Chloe appeared, and they went hiking, staying alone for 3 hours on the last day, while she spent the whole time texting and laughing loudly on the phone. Mark, remaining impartial, added, "By the way, Lena said she tried to warn Chloe not to go, but she told her to mind her own business." I thanked Mark for his honesty and left. I sat in my truck in the parking lot for about 30 minutes doing nothing, remembering 8 hellish years, 2 children, a house we renovated last summer, and the way everything seemed to be falling apart because of a vacation. I drove aimlessly, reviewing every detail of our relationship, wondering if I had overlooked other taco runs I didn't know about. Had I not earned enough? Had I not paid enough attention? My mind was racing at 1,000 miles an hour, and I almost went to my friend Eric's house, who, after 2 divorces, always claimed his first wife was unfaithful, but in the end, not even he could tolerate it. I decided to keep driving until I stopped for gas. Despite having quit smoking when Noah was born, I bought a pack of cigarettes and smoked 3. I arrived home around 9 p.m. and found Chloe on the sofa engrossed in TikTok. While the children played unsupervised in another room, Olivia had spilled juice on her clothes and Noah was playing a game on the iPad at maximum volume. The scene, so typical, was unbearable. I ordered her to go up to her room and sat down in front of her to talk seriously about what happened in Arizona. With an eye roll, she retorted, "Josh, are you still on about this? That was nothing. You're being too dramatic." I reminded her that I had already talked to Mark, making her expression change from annoyance to a mixture of disbelief and desperation in less than half a second. She first tried to discredit her own friend, arguing that Lena had always been jealous of me because Ryan talked to me more and that her marriage was a disaster anyway. I resorted to defending Mark, justifying myself strangely. While we were eating tacos somewhere else, I checked on my phone that the taco truck's close at 11, and you said you went at midnight. I showed her a $78 charge on her card from a hotel bar near the lake at 1 a.m. as proof of those expensive tacos. It was at that moment that everything exploded. We kissed again, although it was just a kiss that one immediately regrets. I looked at her with a mixture of disbelief and anger. I insisted on knowing the complete truth about those 2 hours, but Chloe's feigned tears soon began. Then we moved to the lake, and although the situation progressed, it didn't escalate to anything more than merely physical acts, which didn't justify the lack of sincerity. That technically isn't flirting, but it's still cheating, I told her. When I asked about the supposed excursion the next day, I noticed she was surprised to know that I knew the details. In an accusatory tone, she claimed that Mark was a liar. We only spent 3 hours walking around the lake. And to top it off, she hinted that you had again offered her a tour of the inside of his car, which made me react with all the accumulated fury. In the midst of the chaos, she told me that I had been distant lately, always busy between work, the kids, or getting lost in meaningless video games. I felt lonely, especially when Ryan somehow knew how to listen to me. Then she congratulated me, making me feel desired, only to then use our children as an emotional shield. It was at that instant that I understood everything was over. "No, I'm staying at Dave's tonight," I firmly proclaimed, referring to myself. The atmosphere became chaotic when Chloe shouted not to call her, as if my departure meant something irreparable. And suddenly, in a panic, she seemed to fear that my feelings were involved. However, she retreated upstairs, packed a suitcase between sobs, and clinging to what was left of our past, I explained to the children that I had to go help my Uncle Dave, and that they would see them tomorrow. Noah asked why Mommy was crying, and with talk of adult matters, I gave them long hugs. That night, I checked our phone records on Chloe's laptop and discovered that you had been sending between 40 and 50 messages daily to an Arizona number during the trip. When I confronted you with the messages, you said he was just checking in to make sure I was okay after what happened. That image repeated in my mind during January, almost incapacitating me from looking at you without imagining you hitting Ryan, who meanwhile stayed home taking care of his children, cleaning the house and working tirelessly to pay our debts. That night, I took refuge at my brother's house, sleeping barely 2 hours before calling in sick so I could show up for work the next day. At dawn, I contacted a divorce lawyer recommended by a friend who had gone through a similar situation. The lawyer, a 60-year-old Vietnam veteran specializing in divorces where one of the parents is cheated on, became my last hope. Everything started with a gesture that confirmed to me that our relationship had ended. I paid the $3,000 retainer without flinching for an instant, and at that moment, I knew everything was over. My brother Dave was my rock throughout this process. He offered me his house without hesitation, listened to my venting without judging me, and endured me breaking down on his porch after drinking excessively at 2 a.m. that night. Dave, who never had any sympathy for Chloe from day one, calling her excessively demanding, was the one who allowed me to take refuge in his home. That day was chaotic. Chloe became hysterical, calling me non-stop at least 37 times, until I could tell her, amid all the commotion, that I would come to pick up more clothes and see the children. She later arrived at Dave's house during dinner in a state of total panic, demanding that we talk about what happened. Faced with her agitation, Dave firmly told her to leave before he called the police. Just moments later, I found a note in my truck that read, "I'll do whatever it takes to fix this," but it was too late. I returned home to pick up some things and see my children, while she continued sobbing and desperately promising she would do anything to fix the situation, from deleting social media, quitting her yoga classes, to admitting she had made mistakes. Although, as I used to think, forgetting to pay the electricity bill is a mistake, but letting yourself be touched in a car is a choice. The interventions of third parties were not lacking. I received a call from her mother, and then another paternal tone voice told me, "Marriage has its ups and downs, Josh. You have to be the bigger person and weather this bump." I laughed and replied, "And if your husband received a favor from some random woman, would you also call that a bump?" The person hung up without waiting for an answer, while my brother and father helped me move the essentials to Dave's guest room. My father, with few words but unconditional support. "You're doing the right thing, son, and give me a hand with the boxes," comforted me in the midst of the surrealism of going from a married man worried about mortgage rates and my fantasy football lineup to Googling how child custody works. Fortunately, medical tests confirmed that my STI test was negative, a relief in the midst of the storm. However, Chloe unusually launched herself onto social media. She started uploading old photos in which we looked like a happy family, accompanied by quotes about forgiveness and screenshots of old messages with captions like "fighting for what matters" and "everyone deserves a second chance." The comments from her friends were filled with messages of support. However, what truly broke my heart was the show I had to put on in front of the children. I told them that their father would temporarily stay at my Uncle Dave's house, and seeing my 5-year-old daughter ask if Mommy and Daddy were angry, while my 3-year-old son sobbed without understanding that what had broken in our family was irreversible, internally destroyed me. 2 weeks after the confession, I filed for divorce. Chloe, in an act of humiliation, served the papers at her yoga class, something her lawyer would later point out as a deliberately harassing act. I didn't choose the time or place, but amid the outcry, she screamed at me, accusing me of destroying our family. Ironically, I was convinced that she had contributed to its ruin by turning tacos into code for sexual favors. With the definitive separation, Chloe temporarily moved in with her parents while I found refuge at my brother's house. An uncomfortable situation of co-parenting was established. We exchanged the children in the parking lot, barely making eye contact. Even at one of those drop-offs, Chloe's father appeared to give me a lecture about commitment, to which I responded dryly, not wanting to prolong the confrontation. 3 weeks later, I returned to our house to pick up more clothes and discovered her wedding ring on my Xbox, accompanied by a note that read, "I think these two, with the arrogance of someone trying to hurt." She hinted that it didn't matter to me. I took a photo and sent it to my lawyer. From that moment on, Chloe only intensified her maneuvers to try to win me back or destroy me. She showed up at my workplace with the children until my boss dismissed her. She sent me lingerie photos at 2 a.m. with messages like, "Remember what you're missing?" And her friends informed me that she was in a very dark place. Even her mother cornered my mother at the supermarket, begging her to talk sense into me, to which my mother responded cuttingly. In the midst of this emotional whirlwind, where I experienced anger, depression, self-criticism, moments when I almost succumbed to the temptation to call her, only to return to fury, my construction crew noticed the change in me and, in a strangely positive way, started inviting me out, which served as a release. The divorce process was brutal. Chloe hired a ruthless lawyer, an expert in women's divorce rights, and tried to paint me as a controlling and abusive man. Her evidence included the fact that I tracked her phone location for safety, we controlled expenses, and had joint accounts. I even ended up paying for the trip with friends where she committed infidelity, and she demanded full custody, alleging that I didn't work enough to be a good father, claiming the house, 70% of our savings, and $2,200 monthly in alimony. Her lawyer presented a settlement offer that essentially left me at the mercy of living in my truck and seeing my children every other weekend, which caused my own lawyer to laugh, commenting that they were in their own world. Finally, a solution was negotiated. Legal custody was agreed upon at 50-50, with primary physical custody in my favor. As I had been the stable parent during her mid-20s crisis, it was established that Chloe would receive child support on certain days, even though she was the one who actually worked less. No additional spousal support was assigned, and we sold the house to divide the profits. The judge, a sensible and experienced woman, highlighted that Chloe's offensive behavior and constant manipulation were determining factors in her decision, emphasizing that I had been the pillar of stability for the children, while she focused on her personal relationships. There were regrettable episodes. At one hearing, while Chloe was sobbing, I had to help her leave the courtroom. I felt empty, without joy or relief, exactly the opposite of how I imagined our story should end. For almost a year, between legal fees, court appearances, and the specter of her desperate maneuvers, including the extravagant invitation of Ryan as a witness, who ended up confessing to exchanging intimate photos with her weeks before the divorce was filed. The custody process became a real battle. Today, after countless ups and downs and the exhausting negotiation, the final sentence established that we both share custody equally, although the reality is that I have primary physical custody, while Chloe receives child support for the days she is with the children. No additional spousal support was assigned, and after the sale of the property, we split the profits. The judge pointed out that Chloe's offense and constant disloyalty decisively influenced her ruling, highlighting my consistency in maintaining the routine and well-being of my children. Although for many this outcome might seem like the solution, for me it only meant the consolidation of a wound I never imagined having. After the divorce, Chloe and Ryan maintained a formal relationship for approximately 2 months. During that time, Chloe temporarily moved to Michigan and rented an Airbnb near her parents' house. Although it seemed like something was being built, according to Lena, who is now part of Team Josh, those vacation relationships are not built on solid foundations. Ryan, for his part, ignored Chloe when she started talking about the possibility of meeting my children and, who knows, even moving in with him. To make matters worse, it was discovered that while all this was happening, he was maintaining conversations with 2 other women. As they say, karma never fails. On the financial side, we sold the house for $380,000. With my share, I acquired a more modest home located near my parents' house, who help us with childcare. It's not a fancy 3-bedroom ranch-style house with a large yard, but at least it's ours, and Chloe's name is no longer on it. Meanwhile, she chose to rent a luxurious apartment downtown, a property she really can't afford on her own, which is why her parents are subsidizing this new beginning. Her folks remain convinced that their daughter is the real victim in this scheme. Throughout this process, Chloe has embarked on a strange journey of redemption. Lately, according to her new Instagram account description, she has found herself through spirituality. She got a small lotus flower tattoo and started posting messages about healing and forgiveness. Not long ago, she sent me a long, confusing letter written on elegant letterhead confessing, "I destroyed the best thing in my life because I was too selfish to appreciate what I had. I used it to light a bonfire with my friends." The situation worsened when Chloe's sister wrote to me on Facebook, saying that Chloe cries herself to sleep and is taking antidepressants. At times, I find myself deeply analyzing the situation and thinking that she doesn't care at all. In the end, she made her own decisions. I can't help but think about how, right when I had tickets to a concert after the divorce was formalized, he seemed not to have thought about the family, murmuring Ryan's name while dropping off his children for a hiking excursion in his car. At least I have to admit that the children have reacted better than I expected. They currently participate in a play therapy program, something my health insurance surprisingly covers. However, they still occasionally ask when Mommy and Daddy will be together again. It's curious how sometimes 2 adults function better as friends than as ex-spouses, even though we both love them deeply. Last week, my son asked me if Mommy's friend Ryan would be present at their house, and through laughs, an unexpected conversation opened up. In the workplace, I received good news. I was promoted to regional manager at the construction company, which came with a $15,000 raise. The team organized a surprise party at the local bar and even gave me a cake that read, "Congratulations on the divorce and the promotion." I can't deny that these colleagues were a pillar for my mental stability throughout this stage. Furthermore, I continue to attend therapy. My psychologist comments that I've gone from crisis response mode to rebuilding mode, which I suppose means that when Chloe's name is mentioned, I'm less likely to feel the urge to punch a wall now. Still, I have nightmares where I return to our old house, and everything seems normal, only to wake up and face reality. Those dreams are undoubtedly the worst. I've been very careful, perhaps excessively so, because I have 2 little ones who don't need any more turbulence in their lives. My brother, in an attempt to help, doesn't stop trying to play matchmaker, introducing his wife's friends in a DIY dating show style. Most were nice, but I felt more like I was being interviewed than sharing genuine moments. In the midst of all this, I met Melissa. She's a kindergarten teacher. She has a laugh that makes people turn to look at her and emanates a quiet confidence that doesn't demand the spotlight, but simply captivates. I met her at one of Olivia's preschool events, where we chatted between sips of juice and while doing finger painting. I didn't think much of that encounter at the time, however, we saw each other again at a coffee shop. A few days later, while shopping, something about her essence made me stop. Her energy was different, difficult to describe. There was no arrogance or exaggeration, just a kind of subtle charisma that managed to momentarily dissipate the constant noise in my head. It was then that I realized that next to her, I felt calm in a way I hadn't experienced for years, freed from the pressure to talk about the divorce or feel forced sympathy. We simply shared a silent understanding and comforting company that allowed me to exhale without realizing I had been holding my breath. Curiously, as the weight of the situation became more noticeable, I discovered an unexpected urge to simply express it, to unload my emotions. Sitting next to Melissa without the shadow of the man she cheated on, nor the obligation to be a father who pretends to be calm, reminded me that I am simply Josh. It's not something achieved immediately. We both know that I still carry unpacked emotional baggage. But the idea of resting without constantly being on alert for the next hit is precisely what she offers me. And yes, it makes me imagine what life would be like if I stopped barely surviving and started truly living. In a more unusual twist, it turns out that Lena and Mark have also decided to separate. It seems that Lena, during a trip to Las Vegas, found her own margarita along the way. Mark wrote to me saying, "I think we both married toxic people. Now we go to the gym together on Saturdays and talk about our exes between sets. Misery loves company. The latest is that, according to rumors, Chloe is now dating her spiritual advisor. This man, about 45 years old, sports a man bun and runs the yoga studio where she works. Her intention is to introduce him to the children as a special friend. However, my lawyer has already sent a strong letter claiming the right of first refusal regarding new partners within the custody agreement. From this whole mess, I've learned that if someone lies about the small details, don't be surprised when they do it about the important ones. Promises are mere words. Children, on the other hand, recover faster than one expects. My son still clings to that old stuffed dinosaur from his childhood, but honestly, he's handling the divorce much more balanced than I am many times. True friends remain when the situation gets complicated. My team in construction has shown unwavering loyalty. My foreman never got upset when I needed a break, and the guys always showed up without questioning, offering their support with complete sincerity. That's true loyalty. For any parent worried about litigation, I assure you that it is possible to gain custody if you prove to be the pillar of stability the situation requires. Of course, it is essential to document every detail as if it were a full-time job. Regarding future relationships, if I ever decide to marry again, I already have in mind that a prenuptial agreement must include a clause that expressly prohibits going from taco run to taco run with strangers. It's a decisive factor, without discussion. I'm not trying to say that the path has been uphill and without stumbles. There are days when I feel good and others when seeing someone's car makes unhealthy thoughts assault me, but I suppose that's part of the healing process. I thank all the Reddit brothers who have been there. Your comments and support helped me get through the darkest year of my life, a period where I mourned the death of my marriage, but also came to value my self-esteem. And if your wife ever tells you she's going out for tacos with a stranger at midnight, maybe you already know who to call: the divorce lawyers. Believe me, things have taken unexpected turns. My wife went on a trip with her friends, ended up going out for tacos with a man, and little by little, the accusation arrived that I cheated on her, an accusation that eventually confessed to having slept with him on several occasions. She tried to take custody of my children. She lost money in the judicial process. Today, she's dating her spiritual guru, while I strive to rebuild my life day by day.